Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Christian Therapist Podcast. Lindsay here, and I've got Aaron with me as well.
Hey, Lindsay.
Hey, Aaron. Now, today is a little bit different because usually you hear Aaron and I together and we just talk about the topic. But today we have some friends joining us, which we're really happy about. We have Stacy and Greg Oliver from Awaken, and they're with us today. Hey, Greg. Hey, Stacy.
Hello.
Hey guys.
Yay!
Happy
Glad
to
you
be
guys
here.
are here. Yes, and now it's like very special that we have a guest with us because Aaron and I we were like, no guests, and then we are like, Greg and Stacy, they could be a guest, So you broke the mold for us,
Oh, that's awesome.
which is great. You're good
May
mold.
or may not have had something to do with the fact that when I got an email that you're doing a podcast, I emailed you and said, we'd love to be on your show.
Listen, and I said yes because I like you both,
Well, that's nice.
Yes. But glad you guys are here. Now, today we are going to talk more about working with betrayal, which honestly, Aaron and I, we're supervisors for therapists. When we have new therapists and they have couples come in who have just found out about betrayal, they're walking through betrayal. I mean, man, there is a fear in their eyes to say, could we not work with this couple later, or whatever? And we're like, no. Like, God brought you this couple for this time, and we're going to do a really good job here. But I will also level with you guys. I have had couples come in where they have been with other counselors and they've not really, the betrayal trauma has not really been handled with the care that it needs to. And a lot of times, especially within the church, it has also been handled in a way of really putting the onus on like almost like a forgiving and forgetting,
Right.
like a forgiving and moving on. So today, really a lot of the discussion we want to have, is just let's talk about really how do we sit with couples? What's been really great? What's been really successful? And the reason that we have Greg and Stacy with us is because with Awaken, with their ministry, man, you guys have probably walked with, countless couples just through this process. I mean, tell us just
It's
a
been
little
a
bit
lot.
about your ministry, probably how many couples you've walked with.
Yeah, I wouldn't even venture a guess that I would think would be accurate, but because we just hit 10 years this summer since we started.
Congrats.
We have a lot of, sorry, my thing got cut there. We have a lot of initial conversations with people and I think they're helpful, but a lot of times that's the only contact we have with them because, we may refer them to a therapist or they, just don't come back or whatever. So,
but I think it would be fair to say that in the 10 years that we've been doing Awaken and then 6 years of our own personal recovery before that, it's probably hundreds is not an exaggeration of men and women and couples. And it's not always couples. As we've been going, we've seen a big increase in the number of younger single men who reach out to us because, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. You ask about Awaken. So we're a faith-based or a gospel-based 12-step recovery organization. And what we say our mission is to help people live the lives they were created for. And the way that we specifically do that, because, a lot of organizations could claim that as a mission statement. The way we do it is by helping people find recovery from resources for healing from sexual addiction, unwanted sexual behavior, and sexual betrayal trauma. And we got into it because that's our story. Prior to what we're doing now, I was in vocational ministry for 15 years. I was a church worship and music pastor and also a secret sex addict and trying to juggle those worlds. And in 2009, God exposed that graciously. It was horrible, but it was also wonderful because it's what it needed to happen. And our marriage survived and actually started to become 17 years in to our marriage, because that's how long we've been married when it all got exposed. Started to experience the marriage that we always kind of knew that we'd wanted, but didn't really know how to have, because I wasn't coming with honesty and authenticity. And in different ways, I think Stacy would say that she wasn't either. She wasn't keeping big secrets like I was, but just not bringing our true self into the relationship. And so we got into therapy. We started to understand addiction and codependency and unhealthy relationship dynamics, and just like, oh my gosh, like how have we made it this far, But this coming January is our anniversary, and we will have been married as long healthy as we were married before everything came out. So we're really looking forward to that.
Oh,
This January will be 34 years for us.
no
And so we've
way.
been 16 and a half years in recovery. And then I originally thought that God was going to get me back into church ministry. But over the years where I was kind of thinking that way, he kept bringing people into our lives that had gone or were going through the same things that we had gone through just a few years earlier. And I think it was just a real gradual thing that God was changing my desires, not away from ministry, but just away from the way I'd done it before. And now just sort of, like 2 Corinthians 1 says, comforting others with the comfort that we've received from God. And so what I learned as a person in recovery, being able to bring that hope to people who are just, sitting in the bottom of the crater. And we remember what that was like. So that's kind of how we got started. I know for me, early recovery was almost exclusively a positive thing because it was just like freedom from all this stuff. It was a little different for you, I know.
It was kind of absolutely the worst.
Sure.
Absolutely the worst ever that I've ever gone through.
Right.
And in a weird way, there was some of the I would no, not freedom, but like, oh, this is what it's like to know each other fully and experiencing intimacy and feeling closer and awful because of what I knew, the knowledge that I had now, what had been going on. So it was a mixed bag of emotions. I was all over the place. Found all the swear words. I had not really been a cusser before. I'm a nice little missionary kid. Found all of them, and Greg got all of that, which I don't really regret because
they're pretty intuitive in trauma, aren't they?
They just come naturally. And I did feel really bad though, because as a missionary kid, like I said, that's not what a good Christian girl acts like. And even the anger that I had, that's not what a good Christian girl does with her anger. And so my therapist was absolutely amazing to help me walk through that and just be myself and know that God can handle it. So I fought going into this a little bit because I also wanted to get back in ministry. Just, I wasn't on staff, but being the wife of the pastor or worship pastor, which is what he was, that meant a lot to me and gave me value prior to becoming healthier. Now that is not my value, but yeah, so it was hard. We both kind of walked through a process of, are you going to be okay? Is it okay? Or am I enough if I don't give that back to you? And for a while, I think it was no, well, we really felt like we needed to be back in the church on a staff level. And then when we turned down a position that we were offered, it was like,
that was pretty significant.
And
because I had thought that if I was given that opportunity, of course I'll say yes. But by that point, there was enough healing and the ability to kind of process things a little bit more healthily to say, I don't think this is the best thing. And to have that opportunity to do the thing that I had idolized and then be the one to say no was pretty liberating. And it kind of opened up a canvas to say, well, okay, if not that, then what? And that's kind of what eventually turned into Awaken. We were involved with another organization that's not around anymore here in Birmingham for several years. And that just gave us the passion to just do this as our thing. And so in 2015, we started it, and it has become, a really healthy community, a real resilient community. We've got 24 weekly meetings all over Alabama, and then we've got a meeting in Nashville, one in Dallas, and virtually. So it's really become a pretty healthy community. And you told us you wanted to talk about the dynamics of working with couples. We do work with a lot of couples. Thankfully, we've seen a trend as well, and I just wanted to mention this, of a lot of single people reaching out to us. which is a good bad thing. It's great because they're asking for help before they've dragged this thing into their marriage because they're if they have a marriage, if they end up getting married.
Sure.
The sad thing is, by the time somebody is at the end of their rope and asking for help for something like porn or sex addiction, in my experience, it's usually 10 to 12 years of heavy addictive use before they get to the end of themselves, which means that if I've got a 20-year-old coming in asking for help, that means this started when they were probably about eight.
Wow.
8 or 9. We're hearing more and more stories about just people getting sexualized and introduced to porn, even at 6, 7 years old.
Hmm.
And so that's the tragic
Mhm.
part. The wonderful part is before it has affected many relationships outside of themselves, which is, they're worth getting healthy regardless of anybody else. But before they've dragged it into a marriage, they're asking for help, which is really cool. But we also have a lot of married couples who reach out to us.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get that a lot of too in just in our private practices or therapists we work with that you end up doing either couples with one person or they're post marriage because they had
Yeah.
betrayal and now they're trying to figure out how to move forward.
Yeah.
That impact of I love what you said in terms of your mission statement of really trying to help people become who they're designed to be. And that's
Mhm.
Yes.
kind of what I think of the purpose of life is learning to become who you were designed to be that we have no idea how to be because there's so much junk like that covers us. We're trying to figure out how to shed that to grow into this more true expression. And a lot of the behaviors, like you're talking about, people find surrogates for things that are missing to try to fill a hole,
Mhm.
whether that's
Mhm.
sex addiction or Stacey, I heard you share like it was having the right image. I'm doing the right things. I'm doing all the things.
Yep.
I'm in the right position and the right posture. And then when all of that falls apart, right, and then everything's stripped away, then you're like, well, now I don't even know who I'm supposed to be. Like I've
Yeah.
lost even my the sense of what my identity is supposed to be. But that's part of what I heard you say also, both of you, is that that's where freedom became to begin
Mhm.
to discover who.
Mhm.
So if I'm not these things, then who do I get to be
Yeah.
and
So
grow
true.
into a fullness
Hmm.
So true.
in that journey.
I was 37,
Hmm.
36, 37 when all this blew up. And I don't think prior to that my life was meaningless and I did nothing for God and, didn't do any good. But primarily it was wife, mom, pastor, worship pastor's wife.
Hmm.
Um, Other than that, I didn't know who I was. Just be nice and help people. I'm real reliable. I'm real faithful. I'm real
Sure.
kind until you
Yeah.
really make me mad. But um, at that point, when we got into recovery and started having the people calling, and so and so said you might not freak out if I share this with you. I started to see, like, first of all, God can use this and redeem this awful that we've gone through and use it to help other people. So it's not just like, okay, well, why did we have to go through that? But just really found value my just like, oh, whatever you want me to do, God, I can do that with this person if it's sitting with them, really not doing a whole lot, but it seems to be life changing almost because I'm not telling them what to do or
Yeah, just being present.
just being present. I learned the value of that, and I fought it a little because I'm like, that's it, like that's not big and fancy, but that's really who I am, just to be small, not small, but like, well, how do you say it? Like, I'm okay to just talk to women
Out
and
of the spotlight.
out of the spotlight. It looks real appealing, but I think yeah, this is where God has me. And just those hard conversations, they're just really hard conversations. Hearing time and time again another woman who's gone through this, I'm like, oh man. But I'm so thankful that she's now not alone.
Yeah.
And so I was so alone, and I never want people to feel alone. If I can help that in any way, that's a big deal to me. So yeah, it's been hard, but beautiful too.
I can
Yeah.
imagine that if you were in an environment in the church that you were at where that was like kind of what was expected, then when everything broke loose, because that's part of the things that happens in betrayal, right? Because then it's the isolation, it's the public
Yes.
perception, it's the ostracization that could even occur, even to the one who's injured. Suddenly you're outside too. Is that kind of what you experienced?
Yes. Partially like in the immediate with him having been on staff, I don't want to be around anybody. I was just like, because I worked really hard. I say I worked hard. I really didn't, but mentally, I think I did to be that good couple. We had a good reputation, and we were. There's so many people that could say this, but for sure, Greg, I knew everybody was going to be saying, oh, "Did you? I never knew Greg Oliver. Could you believe
Mm.
what blah blah blah?" And it made me so angry that people would be talking about me like that.
Mhm.
Because I was never going to be that person. I talked about other people that had that happen to them, but it wasn't ever going to be me. Well, now it was me. And so I, for a while, it was definitely, I did not want to be at church around people. We got to fix this. And I really did start to like be the good wife that stands by her man and looks really good at home. I found all the words, and was angry, but I needed to fix. And then soon that I just gave up on that because I knew that wasn't going to work. But yes, definitely people not knowing what to say, you know, we just kind of lost a lot of our life that we
Yeah.
had.
Mhm.
Well, we
It was
pretty much
really
lost our
hard.
whole church
The
community
whole church community.
Mm.
and just started all over
Mhm.
with relationships. And that
Mhm.
was really painful because I had to watch my wife and our three kids, who at the time were 14, 10, and 7, going through that loss, not because of anything that they had done. There was almost like this kind of guilt driven justice that I felt like I deserve this, but they don't deserve. I mean, nobody deserves to lose their community.
Mhm.
Right.
But so that was really hard. And the people that were coming toward us at that time were the most genuine, authentic people we'd ever met. And so it was really just this flood of, whoa, like you can talk like that among people. You can just say what you're feeling and not have to filter it. And it was really a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that God just kind of gave us this new community of people who just had learned this gift of authenticity. And we
Mm-hmm.
started learning how to show up that way too.
Hmm. And it is a gift. I mean, I know because I work a lot with women and couples, but I have had several women who have come in with betrayal in their story, but I'm just seeing the woman that I have then sent to Stacy, and then they've come back and like, I had a phone call with Stacy, and then
Oh.
they were like, yeah, but there was a beauty in like the permission for them to be angry, like that
Mm-hmm.
permission in hearing Stacy talking about her finding her word, all the curse words and things like that, just to like a permission, like this is
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times, like I said kind of earlier when we started, I can feel with even within themselves like a pressure of I just have to like stuff this and move on to support,
Yeah.
you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He's
which
being honest now. He's sorry. He's, whatever. But okay, that's great. But you get to have all your feelings too, because
Right.
I mean,
right.
God's not
Yeah.
okay that this happened to you.
Right.
He's not happy. He's
Yes.
grieving for you, with you.
Well, I think too, what you're talking about, Lindsay, is very common that there's this instilled dutiful sense of being a forgiving wife. But sometimes on top of that, there's the experience of she really is angry and she really is still in shock and trauma and not PTSD symptoms, not knowing what to do. And the sad thing is that there's a faith leader who will tell her that that's what she's supposed to do
Right.
and even kind of buy in to this like lack of understanding about what drives unwanted sexual behavior or sex addiction. It's not about sex or it's not about not getting enough. And so many times, I mean, we've just heard this story so many times that it just makes us want to scream of a faith leader who just doesn't really have any training or experience in this. Well, okay, what does the Bible say? Okay, let me turn to 1 Corinthians 7. Well, maybe you guys should be having more sex and then,
Hmm.
it wouldn't be a problem. It's like giving a diabetic kid the keys to the candy store. It's like,
Right.
it's not about that. And what you've just done is you've made his sin struggle her fault. And that's really, really, it's unintentionally in most cases or in many cases, but it's abusive.
Yeah.
And so that's a sad thing that we see a lot is the betrayal is not really even called betrayal by people that should be in those trusted positions.
Right.
Right.
It's
Right.
even more complicated when, a lot of couples I see, in my experience, uh, when betrayal first comes out, there's all this insecurity about the state of the marriage and if it's going to survive. And it creates like this really fast, like clinging, bonding, enmeshed. They're having tons
Mm,
of sex. Like all this thing happens until it feels safe. And then it erupts, right? So I'm often
right.
wives or whoever's betrayed, I'm like, or I'll tell the betrayer, you have to earn the anger. Like, just because it's not here right now doesn't mean it's not coming. Just know, like, when everything's great, it's okay. But when the anger comes, that's how you know healing's really beginning because
Mm.
it's safe enough to be angry.
I
Oh,
think
that's
that's so
good.
important,
That's good.
Aaron, because those early days is not a really true measurement of how much healing is going on. There's so much trauma bonding, like you said. And but then when she finds, I say she, just because in our experience, it's usually the wife. When she finds her anger, he feels like he's got whiplash. Like, what happened? Everything was going
Right.
so well. It's like, well, sorry, but this is actually a sign that it's going well, because she
Well,
needs to get angry. I mean, this is a huge, this is one of the worst types of betrayal, and for her to not get angry means that she's not being honest about what's happened to her. So,
yeah.
but it is confusing.
Yeah. And her fear is overwhelming her anger, right? The fear
Mm-hmm,
is
mm-hmm,
so much bigger. But that's why I try to prep them up front. I'm like, I'm glad like you're all binding this bonding and you're close and there's all this transparency. Just know, like put a marker in it. Like it's going to be okay. When
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. We had that conversation with our therapist too,
That's right.
because I did feel a lot closer than I'd ever felt because we were, I mean, hearing horrible things, but also sharing just all kinds of things that we were, in our marriage, and just it was beautiful. Remember folding clothes late into the
Yeah.
night and just I'm like, first of all, who are you to be folding clothes with me well into the night and crying, both of us crying all the time. And of course,
yeah,
that wasn't necessarily crazy for me, but I hadn't seen you cry a whole lot. And
Right.
so it was really beautiful. But, and we had more sex than you would have thought you should be having in the wake of all of this. But our therapist said the same thing. Like, and when it doesn't feel like you want to do that or it doesn't feel so great, it's okay.
hmm
Yes.
So that was very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Now, and for you guys, I know you guys have walked through your own therapy journey, but you've also walked with so many others. Like, what do you feel like would just be great, I don't know if it's tidbits, great advice that you would give therapists working with, whether it's couples or individuals, just walking through just the betrayal trauma, the
Hmm.
after
Mm-hmm.
effects.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before I start answering that, I'm
Yeah.
curious about something, Lindsay, you said at the very beginning, because you talked about when you're with new therapists and
Yeah.
they have a fear
Yeah.
about working with couples where there's been betrayal trauma. Do you have a sense of like if there are common things that they share that they're afraid of? Because I have some thoughts about that too, but I wonder if you hear common stories.
Yeah, a lot of it too is just within the modalities that we practice, there is a way of um just really moving to this vulnerable place. But when betrayal comes in, it's almost like it can feel like a fruit basket turnover,
Mm,
where kind of going back to the words like we have to earn this place of safety, and so we can't just go straight to the vulnerability because we don't know if it's safe. Um, and a lot of times, also to be able to show up in the anger, to be able to show up in all of these different ways. Um, just in some modalities, it's more like, hey, maybe that's not going to bring them closer. That might push them further away. But in this, it's like, no, that is very healing and needs to come out because
Mm-hmm.
there's some real pain here. And so
mm,
I know for the supervisees that have come in, they have just been like, I mean, just really the question is like, where do I even start?
yeah.
yeah,
Because we're
Where
a
does
hot
the
mess.
work even
Oof.
begin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Because
think that's great.
everybody's hurting,
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
and it's like, how do we hold all this hurt, but also what's the pathway to take
oh,
them to healing?
I hear a lot of therapists talking about the pressure that they feel because they sense or have a story that their clients are seeing them as these all-knowing experts.
Hmm.
And, they're hot messes too.
Sure.
And they may have some objectivity in your story that you don't have because it isn't their story, but they're afraid of missing something. They're afraid of saying something wrong.
Right.
And like they will.
Yeah.
But because no helper is perfect. I think some of the things that personally I think are some pitfalls to be aware of to try to avoid as a therapist are being too focused on a result, being too focused on like, this is where I want to get them, because I don't think that we know like where they need to get, because there's so little that we know about what's under the surface. The only thing that's presenting when they come to us is the surface. And there's so much backstory in each partner, and there's so much that contributed to their attachment style and the way that they show up and what strategies they're employing and even the way that they talk about and describe. And you just don't know how much of the real them you're getting. And I'm not a therapist. I'm a certified coach, and I've done a good bit of that. Not very much lately, because with Awaken Growing and doing the podcast, we're focusing our energy in different places. But when I was doing a lot of coaching, I would find myself 5 minutes into a session knowing, okay, I want to get them here by the end of the hour. And then I've stopped listening to them.
Sure.
I've decided where it needs to go. And so it's kind of the difference between agency and compliance. Like, a lot of them are coming in looking for the coach or the counselor to tell them what to do, but that's not what they need. They need to especially as a Christian, as a person of faith, realize that if they're indwelled by the Holy Spirit, He's the one that leads them into all wisdom. And so, like, they have what they need inside of them if they're indwelled by the Holy Spirit. And so to slow down enough and just let the process take as long as it needs to help them settle. And so what does that look like? I mean, for me, it looked like asking a whole lot more questions and making a whole lot fewer statements.
Sure.
And when they would say, well, what do you think I should do? Never answering that directly and just saying, well, what seems to you like the thing to do? What are your options? And then they would start naming options. Well, how do you feel about that one? And then they say, well, it doesn't feel good because blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, what's your other option? Da, 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 da. How does that feel? And I would say your face seemed to light up when you started talking about option number 2. Tell me, did you notice that? Tell me about that. And just like Stacy talked about presence earlier, being present and paying attention, because when I'm not thinking about the place where I want them to get, I'm able to focus on them. And so I think that just letting therapists take some of the pressure off of themselves to have all the answers, and to know that God is the one with the answers and He can reveal it to the client. And maybe all He needs us to do is meet them kind of on the 50-yard line and just reflect back to them what they're saying, and let them put some of those pieces together. And of course, sometimes there are reality checks. You just said, I can't follow through on anything. And that's interesting to me, because you obviously got up, got dressed, and got yourself here. And so, like, you're kind of reflecting, so you can show up for an appointment. So is it possible that when you say, I can't do anything right, is it possible you might be being a little hard on yourself? So just stuff like that. But I know that was a lot, but not being outcome focused, I think, is really huge. And that works with individuals or couples. And I think that just, slowing the pace down. I know that I had a big concern that they're not going to think that what I'm giving them is worth the time and money that they're investing. Well, now I've made their therapy or their coaching about me. It's not about me. And if they are unhappy with it, they can say so. And guess what? I've never had anybody say that. So, those are a few things.
I think with my own recovery therapy, as well as women that I talk to, I think things like directing them what to do in the immediate aftermath of finding out all the stuff about their partner, like they need to separate, or they don't need to separate, or like things like that. Everybody,
Like they're wanting you to tell them.
yeah, everybody's so different. If our therapist had told me that he needed to leave, I I think I would have just had another trauma because
Mm.
that
Right.
was not something I wanted. Now, was I being enmeshed and was I wanting to make sure he didn't go act out anywhere and I got to keep my eye on? Yes. All the things like that were not healthy. But in order for me to feel some safety, I just needed him to be close. And so I still, though, was able to be angry and do things. And Becky, our therapist, kept checking in on that, like making sure I was doing my work or we were paying attention to XYZ or whatever. Because she saw us together, actually, which I don't think a lot of therapists do these days. But so I think that's a big one because I have women come to me and they're like, well, my therapist is telling me I need to do this. And I don't really, that doesn't feel right to me.
Mhm.
And that I
It's
just,
a red flag.
oh, I'm like, oh, if your therapist is telling you what to do, that just, you get to say, I don't think that that fits what I need or something, and you're like, oh, I
Right.
don't know. Because a lot of women are used to just doing the right thing and they're doing what they're told. And this therapist knows. So why would I tell them that that's not what I want to do? And I'm like, because you know you better than they do.
Well, I also think there's a real sense of therapists and counselors get misquoted a lot.
Yeah.
And
This is
so
true.
there's what you say, and then there's what's heard, and then there's what's relayed. And
Mhm.
so, a lot of couples will come to us and say, well, like the wife will talk to you and say, well, he told me his therapist said this, blah, blah,
Hmm.
blah, blah, blah. And I know the therapist, I'm like, that's not what he said.
Right. Right.
That
Not
may
what
not
they
even be
meant.
what the
Yeah.
husband heard. That may be what he told her to get her off of his back. But because we know that the possibility is there, even unintentionally, to be misquoted, even more reason to not be as directive and to be more reflective, I think is really, really helpful because we can do that without compromising anything that we believe, you know.
And if I
Mhm.
do hear that, so Lindsay, you feel confident if people come talk to me. If I
Yeah.
hear a woman saying my therapist said XYZ and it sounds off to me, or even the fact that they're just telling them to do something is to me, it just makes me feel prickly. But I will say, what would it be like if in your next session you said, last time we talked, this is what I heard you telling me. Is that what you were saying? Did I hear you right? And
Right.
then if that is what
Clarification.
they were, if that's correct, then you could say, I've thought about it and that just doesn't, I don't think that's what I need to do. And hopefully they're going to respect that. So yeah, I think the thing that just constantly pops out to me is, and even when I'm talking to people and I'm not a therapist, is not telling them what they need to do because they are not me. What works for me may not work for them.
Yeah. Client autonomy is huge, right? Because we can't,
Hmm.
if we tell them what to do, as soon as they stop seeing us, they're not going to know what to do, right? Because they
Hmm.
don't know how to pick anything. So helping them know, like helping them come to their own conclusions of what to choose. So we never tell people what to do.
Hmm.
I'll tell people how to do something. They're like, how do I do this? Well, I can tell you how to do it. Like, if
Yeah.
you want to do, I'll tell you how. Like, here's how you do that. Here's how that works, right? Here's how that can play out. And so they can kind of see or practice or something.
This is what that would look like.
Yeah,
Hmm.
here's what that looks
Hmm.
like. Here's how it would flow. You'd have to, like, if you wanted these outcomes, you'd have to approach it more in this direction. Your partner's probably less. If you say it like this, they're probably not going to hear you. If you say it like this, they're probably more likely to hear you, those kinds of things. But even after a time in therapy where I might have an exposition where I'm helping them know how to do something, I'll still almost always come back with, so what did you hear me say?
Mm.
Yeah, that's good.
Because I'm trying to get them for two reasons. One, I want to make sure that what they heard is what I was trying to say. But second of all, them repeating that is a way of like incorporating it in themselves, and so that they can kind of begin to sift it through and organize it just within themselves as a reflection. Here's what I heard you say. I'm like, okay, cool. And so how do you feel about that? Then there's a personal reflection on that content. So that type of process is something I always try to
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it is hard because even, what you both shared about, Greg, for you of like the pacing and making sure that we're leaning into what they need, not necessarily what we think they need, is really hard because in this time you get so many people saying essentially like, I want the fastest pathway from like A
Yeah.
to Z. You know
Yeah.
what I'm
Hmm.
saying?
Yeah.
Like, wait, this is going to take how many sessions? Like just I want the fat. So you're feeling that pressure, even a lot of times from the clients as well.
Yeah.
It's like, how long is this going to take? And so that's
And
a
the answer is
real,
a lot longer than you want it to. I mean, most of the time.
absolutely. Yes.
Maybe
Oh,
not, but and it depends on how much they're focused on that and getting distracted by that.
that's
Because
right.
if they're looking at their watch the whole time, then that's what's making it take longer.
Yeah.
Right.
If you know what the work is or how you're doing that, often be like, well, I'll go as fast as you can go, but I'm not going to go faster than you can go, and I'm not going to go slower than you can go. But the limit will be your own ability to incorporate and do the process of healing, because that's
Mm,
something you'll be doing. So it takes what it takes, And fear, if fear in overcoming fear and betrayal, like that's the hardest thing,
Mhm.
right? When will I be trusted again? I want to be trusted now. Like, well, you can
yeah,
you know
yeah.
and and how do you measure? So when it comes to like fear, the fear that lingers, either fear of repeating a betrayal or the fear of like how when can I trust again, like what are some things that you gonna help couples know in that regard of managing the
Well,
Mhm.
one of the ways I'll answer this is maybe not going to seem like a direct answer, but I think we'll get there because you were talking about autonomy earlier. And I think it's so critical in couples work to make sure that as the helper, we're not compromising one person's autonomy for the favor of another.
yes.
And let me tell you more about what I mean by that. Stacy and I have both, as non-licensed professionals, completed just level one of the neuroaffective relational model or NARM. And that's a very agency-driven approach to counseling, working with people. And what we have learned a lot about is this concept of operating in child consciousness. When I'm saying like myself as a person who was caught up in addiction, and Stacy is somebody who was experiencing the shock and the trauma of being betrayed. Like we were functioning, I mean, we were adult bodies, but we were little kids having these conversations. And so often in the counselor's office, you've got 40-year-olds who are the mouthpieces of a wounded 8 and 6-year-old. And they're the ones who are actually doing the talking, but they have adult vocabulary. And if the counselor doesn't realize that, what we can end up doing is colluding with the more convincing one. And so,
Yes.
like, if you got a betrayed partner who says, well, I just need him to tell me everywhere he's going to go and put himself on Life 360. And then the counselor turns to him and says, well, are you willing to let her, know where you are and go on Live 360? Well, now all of a sudden it's two against one. And so instead of asking that question, what we've learned is to turn to her and say, if he were to tell you where he's going and get on Live 360, what would that give you that you need? Because it's not about the surface. It's about what is that unmet need that she thinks this is how she's going to get it. Because if she thinks that control is going to make her safe, then that's going to be a long journey. Because when she controls this element and she still doesn't feel safe, she's going to say, well, now I need you to do this, or you aren't doing this right.
Right.
Because what a freedom it would be to be able to feel safe regardless of whether or not he's doing the work, right? Now that means boundaries, that
Right.
might mean separation, but to not have your well-being linked to what another person does. And so often it's easy for the helper to get sucked up in that of the one that's more charming or more convincing, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I'm probably 17 miles away from the question that you asked, but I just like,
Oh, I wanted to jump on because that would reference something you said earlier when it comes to things that new therapists are trying to struggle with, which was, and it's ironic, I think, that a therapist would be uncomfortable with that level of vulnerability, right? But new therapists they're leaning
mm,
into really deeply vulnerable place, and when there's a vulnerability and a high intensity
yeah,
Mhm.
leading in something that's intense, if they don't have a lot of other experience in their life doing that sort of thing, then they just don't have a lot of tools to draw from. Like I relate to your story. I was in ministry for 15, 16 years before changing careers and moving into therapy.
mm,
And being on staff or being in a pastoral role, you have to learn how to engage high intensity. It's just going to come to you, right? Whether it's you're working with a parishioner, a couple, or something that's come to you for help, or you got some volunteer that's like off the chain, and freaking out. And you just got to go know how to lean into that high level to lead in a very compassionate way in the midst of this intensity. And a lot of, I think, new therapists don't have a lot of life experience where they've done that before. And then the first time they're getting that experience, it comes with all of the expectation that they're supposed to know how to do. So they're more prone to pick a direction, like this is what we have to, because they're looking for a way of managing themselves in the midst of all that. But I think that that analogy you shared in terms of it's like we're just a boat on the river of their experience. Like we're not directing the flow of the river. We're just figuring out what to do within the flow of where it's at. Gives them some freedom to navigate that. But
Mm-hmm.
you had shared that, and I was just like, well, they just have no idea
Mm-hmm.
that kind of a leadership role of experience.
Yeah, it's so true.
You communicated a fear of freezing up when you're talking to people, right? And not knowing what to say.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes they are going on and on and on, and I'm thinking I've been betrayed, but I'm like, I don't know what to do with any of this. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
But then inevitably, just sitting there and listening, I'll think of a question, and that'll get us going on whatever topic I think direction we need to go. But back to the trust
Yeah,
question,
Yeah.
I remember meeting with his sponsor and his wife
Mm.
very early on. And I mean, probably weeks into the process. And his sponsor was somebody that he had known for a long time. So I was just, I think, asking, how am I ever going to trust him again? Like, I thought I trusted him before, not 100%, but like, I just like, I don't even know. And he said, I forget how he said it first, what he said first, but like basically, you can see his behavior, you can see the things that he's doing. I don't think I ever had your location. I'm not real good with technology, so I don't think I ever tracked it. Now, more recently, I have you and the kids, but that's not something I did, but definitely was scared whenever I didn't know where he was. And so he talked about the fact that, all of those things, if he's, willing to share where he's going or what he's done or just doing the work, going to his meetings, meeting with me, those are, actions that definitely show that he's doing the work, at least outwardly.
That's data that's going to help.
Data that will help, not doing those things is going to show that probably he's not really invested in this. But ultimately, he said, I would encourage you to really lean into your relationship with God and trusting him because he will bring to light the things that need to be brought to light. And I was like, yeah, but he waits a long time sometimes. 'Cause we were married 17 years and it was like, and then all this blew up. And then some people are just married. Some people are engaged. Some people are dating. Some people are married 50 years, 60 years, whatever. There's no good time. But anyway, that was really helpful for me because it's like Greg was very broken and repentant, very sorry, and never turned back. Like he never wavered from that. If ever he was defensive about anything, I'm like, what are you doing? What did you do? Because the defensiveness was like a red flag to me. And I had to learn that it feels that defensiveness might remind my system of a time before when he was, acting out or whatever. But that doesn't always mean that's what's happening. So just, I think, yeah, seeing the behavior, seeing his actions, if he's very defensive, if I don't know, combative or whatever, ask more questions about it. Don't assume that that means he's done something, but you can ask questions. And so my thing for me is listen. I think I would tell a therapist, like I would encourage a client to listen to her gut because for so long, probably she ignored it or said, well, see, I'm sure that's not really what's happening. And then you find out all the stuff that's true. And then you don't know what you can trust. And I still have feelings in my body that I'm like, feels like old. But I'll tell him, I just need you to know this is how I'm feeling. I don't know that there's anything going on, but if there is, because there were things going on before, and I would tell him.
And I would gaslight her.
And he would gaslight me. And he had just acted out, or he was in the middle of acting out when I would be calling because I was worried something was wrong. And so now I can't really do anything different other than speak up and say, I just feel this. And then he'll say, there's nothing going on.
Well, you can and do things differently because you don't do it in an accusatory way.
Right.
And like she was just saying, but that has come because you were able to get through that phase of finding safety and stability. I mean, I know like one of the models that a lot of people in couples recovery know about is Carol, the coach's ERCM model, early recovery couples empathy model, and like help her heal, help them heal. There's some of the resources. And she'll say that a betrayed partner cannot enter into that phase of post-traumatic growth until he or she has found safety and stability. And so like it's going to be just reactive for a
Is
while.
it honesty and safety? Safety and honesty?
Honesty is what leads to safety. Yeah.
Because I know that for some women that I talk to, their husband hasn't told
Hasn't
all the truth,
disclosed, hasn't told all the
or
truth.
he's still lying and she keeps catching him. So I say, I think, I think that if he's still lying, you're not going to, because they want to go to marriage counseling. I'm like, I don't think that's necessarily going to be helpful.
Yeah,
if
you may not be
he's
there
still
yet.
lying. So you got to have the truth. It's got to be out there. And they may not be lying about addiction stuff, but they're still lying. And so, yeah, I think, I don't know where we
Well,
are now with all of that.
Very hard. One of the other aspects that comes often in betrayal is that disclosure process.
Mm,
And as much as I have to warn, like in the normal case, like the husband of her anger coming, I have to warn the wife, like there's probably more disclosures coming.
mhm, mhm,
Because here's what happens is that they're disclosing as much as they think that will keep the marriage together. And their fear of like, but if I tell her everything, I will lose everything
mhm,
creates this feeling of barrier within them that's just terrified to disclose everything. So then it comes out in these pieces as they feel it's safe. They'll disclose more because that's safe, and then they'll
mhm.
like they're working their way through it. But helping him know, like every time you do that, you're restarting this whole process. Every time
Yes.
you do that, like you're going back to step one because now she
Mhm.
can't trust you again because there's more. So
and of course he is, because that's a strategy that he started doing when he was 5 years old. And anytime he would do anything wrong, his parents would freak out. And so
right,
he learned that the best way to feel safe is to lie. And
right,
so, you can't say that the betrayal is his parents' fault, but you can say that that trend that was started that
right,
created this belief that I can't be honest and have things be okay, that's
Right.
a well-worn path. And that's been there for a long time, which is why I think that for couples therapists, and particularly ones who don't have a lot of experience, if you get a couple in there and you find that they're not each working with an individual therapist already, I would say this is premature.
mm,
Like you've got to understand, you husband, you wife, you've got to understand what you're bringing into the party.
yeah,
And I don't think that we're at the point where two hurting, broken people can produce something healthy yet.
yeah,
And it's not that to say doing individual work first means it's more important than couples work, but you kind of think of it as a 101 class that you have to pass before you're ready to take the 201 class. It's not more important, but it's a prerequisite.
yeah,
Like I can't show up healthy for couples work if I'm not a healthy person.
Mhm.
And sometimes just the not having the one that I've hurt sitting here, boring holes in me with her anger while I'm trying to get to the bottom of my story, can, if we can help to remove that distraction of,
yeah,
I can be honest with my therapist and not worry about, if what I say is going to make her mad. That kind of thing is really, really helpful.
yeah.
Yes.
The core principle of couples, of relationships is if a vulnerable disclosure is met with an empathic response, right, we feel more securely bonded, right?
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
what
Mhm. Mhm.
couples is all about, that not happening, right? And you're
Hmm.
trying to facilitate that. And so, how to build that trust, how to build that safety where something can be vulnerable and the other one can be held, or at least be able to contain themselves in that vulnerability, how to construct empathy so we're not just, that's a big thing for me of constructing empathy, not just waiting for it to naturally occur, but how do we really help people embody the other person's experience, right? To get them out of themselves, to really feel connected in that way.
Well, and don't you think that the counselor helps to also model what empathy looks like? I mean,
Absolutely. That's the
some
whole, like,
people who didn't receive a lot of empathy and have trouble conjuring it up. And that also speaks to another fear of younger, less experienced therapists is like, what if I do freeze up or they share something and I don't know what to say? And I'm just remembering a time that I was coaching somebody and that happened to me. And I just said, golly, that is a lot.
yeah.
And I just sat there and looked at him and he just started to cry. And I said, gosh, that's a lot, partially to buy time because I didn't know what I was going to say next.
Mhm.
And it turns out that that was God ordained because he just needed to feel what it felt like to have somebody hear his story. And like, I'm speechless. There are no words for what you just shared with me, but that was a lot. And he wept.
Yeah.
And I think that when we can show up for a person whose pain has turned into causing pain in other people's lives with empathy, then that begins some of that resilience building process in them so that by the time that disclosure comes around, they're not just completely raw. It's not something you do in the first week, in most cases. It's something that you prepare for. But to have experienced empathy from a caregiver, knowing that you might not get that empathy from your partner, at least that's something. And it can help to encourage the person to make that decision to take those steps.
Mhm.
Holding the truth of that experience alleviates your need to have an answer for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just be in it and be like, that was a lot. I
Hmm.
got nothing to say. Like,
And you
wow.
realize that
That's hilarious.
so many people grew up with nobody giving them a say, nobody asking them how they felt about it, just being told, this is how it is, this is what you need to do, and this is what Christians do, so just suck it up. And so there's so many times when Christians come into counseling, coaching, or therapy with no sense of agency. And
Mhm.
when they can be invited to experience what that is like, gosh, that just is a game changer.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
I would agree. Well, and I think the other thing too that's important to note, and Greg, you kind of alluded to it, is like for me when I went through school for therapy, man, they were like, I remember the class very distinctly, where it was like when you work with betrayal, you meet with them together, then you meet with one, then you meet with the other, and you prepare one for the disclosure, you prepare the other for the questions, and then you come back and then you do a one, like it's like a one
Hmm.
session disclosure, and then you're done. And then now you just move into building the connection and the relationship back. And man,
Wouldn't it be
that
nice if it was that tidy?
oh my gosh, that bumbled me so much. I like, this is the formula, guys. Like, this is what was taught, and then it wasn't until, I mean, just sitting and going, this is not working, and having to kind of sit back and go, why is this not working? And just the place of, to echo what you guys were saying is like the amount of work that needs to be done on both sides. One, to be able, do you even want to hear the story,
Hmm.
because you get to choose if you want to hear it or you don't have to hear it.
What do you want to hear? How much do you want to hear?
Right, right. And then for the other of, man, a lot of times these just places come out in layers
Mhm.
too, and so giving safety and space for the layers to come out, but orchestrating it not as a formula, but as like a witness with them in their, are they ready for it? Are they not ready for it? What, because ultimately we're wanting for them to be able, to move towards um really like what you were saying, authenticity, and to move towards this place of going, man, now after knowing everything, I'm now going to make informed choices. Like, do
Hmm.
I want
Hmm.
this relationship now?
Hmm.
Do I
Right,
not?
right.
And so, man, it was just having to sit back and go, one, there is a disclosure process, but it's not what I was taught, you
Hmm.
know. And then two, this process takes a lot longer, and it has to do with where, I mean, it's not a one-stop shop because people are in very different spots. I mean, you have, I'm sure, you guys have experienced even those that don't want to look inward
Hmm.
into their
Hmm.
story or into the
Sure.
layers,
Hmm.
Um, but just I have watched the I don't know if damage is the right word, but it's just kind of extra hurt added on when we've moved into this like formulaic one-stop shop for
Yep.
everybody,
Yeah.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
don't know, have you guys experienced that or seen that from people that have
Yeah.
come through?
Yeah. I personally took a long time. I wish we had written down, but who would think to like, okay, this 9 months in, Stacey was willing to look at her own stuff. We wouldn't have done that, but like it was a long time. And I remember the time he said he didn't like the way I was saying something. You would have thought he had committed the whole thing all over
It was
again.
the first time in recovery that I said, I don't like the way you're talking to me right now.
Yeah, it didn't go well.
Well, you say it didn't go well. Your initial reaction was not positive, but it turned into a really good conversation.
Yeah, you're right. It did. But that was a long time before I could get to that. And we didn't like plan that out. But I think I tell women, and if we meet with couples, I'll say to the husband, like, because he's saying something about her, whatever, controlling or whatever. And I'm just like, you're going to need to give her a lot of minutes before we hone in on this, because she's just so hurt. And she can't even look at she has parts, yes, that she brought in that are not great, but she can't look at that when this is so big and just so painful. So yeah, I think getting to that point though, everybody's different, and some women don't seem like they're ever going to get there. And so I know for me, just again, I'm not a therapist, but they're asking for input, and I'm like, they're like, I just don't think I should have to blah, 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 or whatever. And I said, you know what? That makes sense. And I get that. For me, I do that a lot. For me, when I started being open to look at the things that I brought that were not great, it was helpful for me as a person with my friends, not just my relationship, my marriage. So, and you get to choose. And if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. We do have to take what comes with whatever we choose. So, think about that or whatever.
But something you said too a minute ago, when she'll say, I mean, this isn't fair. This shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
You're right.
You're right.
Nothing about this is fair. Like the whole thing that we're talking about is something that never should have happened. And sometimes just hearing that reflected back by another person can dislodge the logjam of just repeating the offense over and over again. It's like, yes, that's what you just said is true. This should not have happened to you.
Yep.
And sometimes until another person acknowledges and affirms that, they just are keeping on telling that complaint story because, like, does anybody see what happened to me? Does anybody feel that pain? And what you want to say is, hey, it's time to think about what do you want to do now? Well, but sometimes we haven't even affirmed this was an injustice. This was wrong. There was nothing about what happened to you that honored God. And just hearing that from another person, it makes them know that they're not crazy. Makes them know that they're not selfish or sinful for thinking that. And it can really, again, that empathy, Aaron, that you mentioned several minutes ago, it just unlocks the door of them being willing to move forward because God can use it, I think, to help people get unstuck.
It's hard too for the betrayers in that regard also because oftentimes the things that led them to betray were aspects of their own brokenness that they didn't pick or didn't want in their isolation. And then their method of self-soothing has created more isolation for them. And so when that accountability comes, there's such this feeling of I can't take it because they were doing all these things to get rid of all those feelings in the first place.
Yep.
So that ability, to hold my partner's distress, to not run, to not escape, to acknowledge and say, I did, and I'm still here and present with you, is such a healing posture to be able to hold her distress. And so we often say, like, there's compassion for why, but there's accountability for what.
Yeah, but you brought up something really important, and that is the dragging of an old strategy and a pattern into it. Sam Jolman, in his book, The Sex Talk You Never Got, that just came out last year, excellent book, talks about how many times for a man who's struggling with addictive sexual behavior, his acting out is not connected to a present arousal. It is connected to a desire to regulate his emotion. And so we have a very narrow window of tolerance, which is that psychological term for, on a scale of 1 to 10, how amped up or how, shut down does the world around us have to be in order for us to not be able to handle it, right? We want to have a wide window of tolerance, but so many of us were not taught how to do that by our primary caregivers growing up, to where anything that makes me feel hyper or hypo aroused, I don't feel like I can live with it or bear it. And so I run to the self-soothing, like, that was the phrase you used. And, with sexual acting out, that's basically just a more grown-up version of thumb sucking, right? Or sucking on a pacifier, something physical that I can do with my body that makes me calm down or that makes me feel energized. And, for the sex addict looking at porn and masturbating or then escalating that behavior, it can do both of those things. And so when we realize that part of your work as a recovering person and as a person who is owning the betrayal that you did is learning how to sit in those places where you're seeing the pain that you've caused and not using it as a reason to run off the reservation again, but to sit in there. And we can't do that unless we have support around us, because a lot of times we look to the one that we've hurt as the one that we want comfort from. Well, that's like a lion that attacks a zebra and then goes and says, well, I'm sorry, baby. I didn't mean to kill you, and we expect the zebra to have compassion on the lion who was just trying to rip it to shreds earlier. No, we have to go and find healthy support from our therapist, from a recovery community, from friends that are not going to just give us like slap on the wrist accountability, but who are really going to come to know our hearts and not judge us and like just say, tell me how do we find Jesus in the gospel in what you're walking through, And if we don't have those things, then couples work is going to be grueling and excruciating. And it may be anyway, but it'll be even more so if we don't have that support.
Yeah. So the more that betrayer is able to connect with their own longing, their own desire for true connection, then that's kind of, and the therapist can fulfill part of that as a surrogate, can sit in that deeply vulnerable place. So they feel safe to be that vulnerable. Then they can begin to have more tolerance to acknowledge all the behaviors and how they hurt, because the devastation of what I've caused, it's counterbalanced with something that's soothing, right? So that compassion, because without compassion, accountability just feels like judgment.
Yeah.
So having both of those things together really facilitates that ability to stand in the gap and hold her pain, because that's the path of closeness, which is so contrary to what we think. Like if I'm holding her pain or I'm holding her anger, then that's not connection. Like, no, that is connection. Like that's the path to connection.
And
Yeah.
and getting to experience that one-on-one as a recovering person with your counselor can help build that resilience. I mean, just I thankfully, by the grace of God, have been sober from acting out the entire time I've been in recovery. But I've had plenty of times when I've drifted kind of into that mental checkout place and have started to do some patterns that were unhealthy that used to always lead to acting out. And when I would confess or just share with Stacy that like, hey, I found myself in that place, I mean, that affects her. She has feelings about that, and the way that she expresses them don't always feel good to me. But I've learned that like I can absorb that. I can accept that. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to do anything, even if it makes her scared. Like I need to be able to experience what it's like to have her feel scared, and to know that I can be honest. And then over time, we realize, and so many women have said this whose husbands have betrayed them, really even more than knowing that he's keeping his streak of sobriety going, I just need to know that if it ever breaks, he's going to be honest with me. I can handle the slips as long as he tells me the truth. It's the lying that does more damage even than some of the behavior. Now, obviously, there are some behaviors that are pretty devastating. But, people who have been in recovery and they'll come confess, hey, I had a slip for about 5 minutes. I looked at something on the internet and I masturbated, and I need to bring that into the light. Like that doesn't throw the partner the way that he thought it would, because she has come to see, okay, I can trust him to bring hard things to me in honesty. Yeah. And that's just a resilience that has to build for the betrayer, as well as the kind of resilience that has to build for the one that's been betrayed. And that takes time.
It does. It really makes me think of the verse in Philippians where Paul's like, I want to know Christ, and not just the power of his resurrection, but the fellowship of his sufferings. Like I want to feel his suffering because I want to be that close to him. And if that's beautiful at any time, there's not good reasons to practice it. But betrayal absolutely
Mhm.
highlights this need of like needing to be in each other's shoes, understanding the quality of their suffering and in all of the struggles that go inside of the other's experience. And if I can hold my experience and their experience, then there's so much more compassion because it's not just something that's being done to me, whether it's her anger or his acting out, but that sense of like, I know what happens in you in these circumstances, and even though it's distressing for me, like I can hold that space for your experience. And so
Mhm.
we're doing that together. That's I don't know. There's fewer places where you can feel as one as when you can hold both compassion and distress at the same time.
Mhm.
It's
Right.
so true. I think I finally am at a place, maybe for a little while now, where I do have empathy and I do understand, like, to as much as I can, how he got to where he got. Um, Not fully, for sure, but like it
Mhm.
makes sense, of course, kind of thing. And but that took a while too. Like,
Mhm.
but it has helped. Like if a betrayed partner is willing to go there and to continue growing and really wants to understand. Not in the beginning. I didn't really.
Sure.
I'm like, I don't care. I
Mhm.
didn't have the greatest upbringing. I didn't do XYZ.
Mhm.
Although I did think I had the greatest upbringing, I didn't think I had any trauma. So that's a whole other story, a whole other podcast. But yeah, it's been very helpful to have compassion for him
Mhm.
and to try to understand.
And with you saying that, there's one more thing. I don't know what kind of time we have, but I want to make sure to say this.
Mhm.
There is the kind of work that we've been talking about, which is the early stage work in the initial aftermath of something blowing up and betrayal coming to light, whether it's something that they just found out or if it's been kind of this, cycle, but now they're doing something about it. And that work is critical. But a lot of couples, once they get through that phase and things seem to have calmed down, they quit doing couples work. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
so important to say, okay, you may not need to be in therapy to the same intensity or the same frequency as you were at square one, but there are things like that Stacy and I just a couple of years ago were able to get in touch with through because in the absence of a crisis, now we can really from a safe place look under the hood and say what are some of these patterns that are still showing up but are easy to ignore because there's not a big crisis that's blinking on the marquee. And like I've gotten to the point where I can bring something up that I don't like and not just flinch, and I have come to know about Stacy that that's hard for her to hear something because she goes to shame. And when she goes to shame, she tends to get really big and reactive. But to be able to say, okay, I'm experiencing this and I don't like it, so I can be avoidant and I can go over here, but that's an escapism and it's not driving connection. So I'm
Mhm.
making the bargain in the moment to say I'm willing to accept some initial conflict because this is intimacy. This is
Mm.
Right.
authenticity. Well, there's no way you can do that in the beginning phases right after something's
Right.
blown up, which is why you do that work so that later you can keep doing this work.
Mhm.
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's been really something we did a couples intensive a couple of years ago when we went on a sabbatical, and we're surprised at how much there was that we had to benefit from that. It's like
Mhm.
we got it figured out. I mean, we didn't really think we had it figured out. We thought we had a lot more figured out though,
Yeah.
and we had a lot more things that revealed
Yeah.
themselves, and it's been great
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
to
true.
be willing to keep doing that
Yeah.
work.
And that's the beauty, right? To know that it was revealing and it was great.
Yeah. Yep.
Not something to
And
Mhm.
run.
not a lot. I don't know that we talked very much at all. It was a 3-day intensive, all day, 3 days. Me, Greg, and the therapist, um, which was good and hard. But I don't know that we even really talked that much about the addiction and
Mm-mm.
betrayal, because it was so much more about our attachment
Mhm.
and really backstory, like when
Yeah.
we were
It was
kids.
an emotionally focused therapy practitioner.
Yeah.
So a whole lot of slowing down,
Yeah.
listening, and yeah.
And so it's been so good. But yeah, for sure, keeping on doing that work, whatever that looks like. We're not in therapy every month, but we have one and we email when we need help.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And what you guys are describing is just there are kind of different levels of safety,
Mm-hmm.
as your relationship grows and as you
Mm-hmm.
start to do the work, both
Mm-hmm.
individually and together, that, even now, would you say, you said just, well, you're 34 years married. Is that what you were saying? So,
January.
yeah,
We'll be
yeah,
in
yeah.
January.
That you're
Yeah.
going, man, we're still, because that's the way that God designed us to constantly be able, to search and know what's happening within us is in relationship with each other,
Mm-hmm.
with our therapists, with
Mm-hmm.
community,
Mm-hmm.
and I know for you guys, your really amazing offering to people is just this place of community, of accountability. Kind of talk just a little bit about the groups that you all offer, just what people will experience in the groups, because
Mm-hmm.
you're right, no matter where on the journey, you need these people that know you so well, that can call you to the carpet, but also
Mm-hmm.
love you in, which calling the carpet is love, but
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
all different ways, in
Yeah.
the ways you need. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the partner betrayal
Yeah.
first?
So we have one in-person meeting here in Birmingham. We would love to have more. We've offered some at different churches, and for whatever reason, everyone seems to come to Tuesday night meetings. So we have one meeting. We usually have about 20 people. So for us, that's pretty big. And there are a number of those ladies who are pretty consistent. So I think it's a pretty big deal. But it's a support meeting. We have guidelines and we are faith based, but we're not like, how would you say it? We don't push somebody. We've had women who come who are deconstructing and walking away from the faith, or they don't really know what they believe about God.
You don't
And
have to believe what we believe. You just have to
yes,
be comfortable that we believe it and
no,
talk about it.
yes, and we will talk about God, but we try not to do. It's not going to be like you need to do this because this is what the Bible says. Um, not
There's some
not
who
in that
really want
meeting.
to say that.
They really want to say that. And sometimes women say things about God that are. It's hard for me to sit there and not fix it because I'm like, oh, that's not what I want everybody to know. Like, especially if there's new people, that's not what Awaken believes. Like, no, I'm going to trust the Holy Spirit here. And I always say, if you ever have questions, if anything ever said that you don't know, you're not sure about, just please come ask. Or they'll go back to their therapist, and then I'll hear about it. Kind of, get an email. That doesn't happen very often, but it's really a space, a support group for women to come in, however they feel, wherever they are, whatever with hopefully some guidelines there to keep it safe. And we have a topic, talk about it, just our experience, and not prescribing what other people should do. We try not to mention books, and say if you ever do have questions about resources or whatever, just wait till after the meeting and ask somebody. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So for the addiction recovery meetings, we have a pretty not rigid but definite structure to it, and well, first off, a lot of people call our meetings a class or they call it an accountability group. And we say it's not either one of those things. It's not a class, although if this is an addiction you're recovering from, you do need to get good information, but you can get that in therapy and through some great resources. It's not accountability, although you do need that, but you really need that from a grace-filled person that you trust at your church and also from your sponsor. What the meetings are they are pure and simple support, because we need, as recovering people, we need a place to learn the practice of being consistent truth tellers, because there's no addiction that does not also overlap with lying. We have to lie to sustain the addiction. And for some of us, lying got so natural, it was like breathing. We would lie about things. I would lie about things I didn't even need to lie about because it became so natural. And so to tell the simple truth, like the Bible says, so let your yes be yes, let your no be no. We need a place where the people who are looking at us as we're sharing aren't going to go, or they're not going to say, man, that's really messed up, or run out of the room. They're going to say, thank you for sharing. And they're not going to fix you. And so we make sure, especially when we're asking pastors to refer their people to our meetings, to let them know they're going to maybe say some things that are theologically way off or wacky, and nobody is going to correct them. And
Mm-hmm.
that may be the most godly thing that they experience, is someone who will just meet them in the messed up place that they are and just offer unconditional love. And we're trusting that God uses the meetings as a part of the process that he has them in. Because again, if the Holy Spirit is driving this train, I don't have to worry about the destination. I can just worry about doing my role. And that's what Awaken tries to do, is our role in a Christian man or woman who is seeking recovery, either from betrayal trauma or from addictive or unwanted behavior. And so in doing that, we've found that the community really supports itself. They are finding sponsors. They're working the 12 steps and realizing how biblical they are.
Mm-hmm.
And we're finding an increase in people who are getting sober. We don't make sobriety the idol. It's not the be all end all. It's the means to the end. You can't really do the deep work if you're not sober. So we get sober, not so that we can sit there and admire our sobriety, but so that we can go do the deeper work of, how did I get here in the first place? Why
Sure.
was it so hard for me to relate to God? So we do have, like, our meetings are 3-part. The first part of the meeting is some readings we do. The second part is a check-in, where each person gets a chance to take 3 or 4 minutes and check in. And then the last part of the meeting is a topical discussion surrounding different aspects that we feel like support healthy recovery. And anybody who wants to start Awaken meetings where they live, we have basically, it's almost like, meeting in a box. It's ready to go. We can train facilitators. We can support and make that something that can happen. In the meantime, people who don't live in Alabama or Nashville or Dallas but want to get involved, we do have virtual meetings. And so you can just go to awakenrecovery.com and click on the meetings link, and you can fill out a form, and someone will personally reply to your inquiry and let you know what the options are for you. Another thing that we offer just for about the last year and a half is a podcast of our own called What We Really Want, Conversations About Connection, because we've found that with unwanted or addictive sexual behavior, it's not that people are doing this because they just love porn so much, right? Or alcohol or drugs or whatever their addictive process or substance is. They're looking to get a legitimate need met, but they're looking in a distorted way, a sideways method that just kind of follows their strategy. And so instead of focusing on how to not do the bad thing, this podcast is about helping them get a vision for what they really want, which we believe, if it's boiled down to one word, is connection.
Mm-hmm.
What would it look like to have healthy connection in all different aspects of your life? And so not every episode deals with addiction. Not every episode deals with sex. There's some of them that are theological. Some of them are with artists and musicians. Some of them are with authors. But it's been just a huge encouragement to me just to have these conversations and let people sit in on, this is what it likes. This is what it looks and sounds like to have people just meeting at that point of authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had people who have found our recovery community through first listening to the podcast, which has been pretty cool.
That's great. That's awesome. And tell everybody what does it cost for them to join your groups?
$0. It's
Zero.
free. The meetings are free. We have some things that we offer. We have recovery intensives for men. We have betrayal trauma workshops for women. And we do charge for those just to get our costs covered. But there's never a charge, and there won't ever be a charge for being a part of our community. We are a nonprofit that's supported by individuals and churches. Most of our money comes through that support. And so we're able to offer that community for free. We don't want there to be any barrier to entry. And so, yeah, you can be a part of our community, and we want to take away anything that would get in the way of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And really, you do take away anything that would get in the
We try to.
way of that,
I mean, we can't take away fear, but we can tell you that we are confident that if you are willing to keep walking in the midst of that fear, that we feel like you'll be glad that you did.
Mm-hmm. Totally, totally. And it's been great, because I don't know if I said this before, but I have the flyer, that we have in our lobby. And it's very wonderful just to be able to be like, no, you can join from anywhere and it doesn't cost anything. And it's this instant community, which is what really we all need.
And it
So
really
true.
is. And Lindsay, even the people like we have 2 virtual men's meetings, one on Wednesdays, one on Sundays. And these guys, some of them live in Canada, in the upstate New York. We've got people all over the country. We had a missionary in China who was calling in for a season. And these men have bonded, and they've
Yeah.
never seen each other in anything other than 2 dimensions on a Zoom screen. And yet they've shared things with these men that they've never shared with anybody else. And it's a real legitimate community. And it's kind of like you don't know what you've been missing until you start to experience it.
Right.
And we would just really encourage people to come. Nobody's going to make you say anything. You're not going to be forced to share. You can just come and listen right at first. But if you do live in Nashville, I imagine with people knowing that you guys are in Nashville, that's probably where a lot of your audience is listening in from. If you are a man in Nashville looking for sexual recovery, well, first off, there's SA all over the place, because Nashville's the birthplace of SA, Sexaholics Anonymous. But if you're looking for something that distinctly has a gospel focus, Awaken does have a men's meeting that meets every week in person in Nashville, and we could get you that info if you reach out through the website.
Yeah,
Great.
that's amazing. Greg and Stacy, thank you guys. I know it was funny.
Absolutely.
I was like, man, we'll just start talking. We'll see how long it takes. And now I'm like, honestly, we could keep talking.
We can talk.
Which is wonderful. But thank you both so much for hanging out with us. This is a great conversation. And we just always hope that therapists feel encouraged. They feel like they're not alone, in just trying to work all this out as we sit with people. And just thank you guys for, man, the countless numbers of people that you all have sat with to just share your story, and to help really a lot of people know they're not alone in this. So
Well,
we
thanks for
appreciate
saying
you.
that.
Gets in that as many people as we sit with, and they will say thank you and this was helpful or whatever, and it means a lot. But hearing from people who do this work as well, I don't know, it just helps me keep going because some days it's just, I don't know, it's just hard.
It
Yeah.
is.
I don't want to talk about it anymore. But some
I
days it's hard,
know. Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's what we found is it can, the profession that we're in and just wanting to sit and be helpers, it can it can wear on you. It can feel
mhm,
pretty isolating. And
mhm,
so
mhm.
that's that
Yeah.
hope is that as we all keep talking with each other and not feeling alone, that it does give us that like energy, that chutzpah or whatever you
Yes.
Yeah.
call it, to just like keep it going,
And
Keep
to
just a
going.
any
little bit
counselors who are
longer.
listening, stay in counseling yourself.
That's
I
right.
think
Yes,
That's
yes,
right.
like I'd
yes.
love for that to be
And
like a requirement, but you get a lot of residue of other people's darkness that just kind of sits
Mhm.
on you, and
mhm,
and we don't realize sometimes how much it's weighing until we can talk to somebody about that. But
right.
yeah, thank you guys for having us. Just real quick, just as a reminder, awakenrecovery.com for people who want specific information of that, or whatwereallywant.show is the website for the podcast. And we just love for people to become more aware of what we're offering just from our own experience in case it would be helpful.
hmm I love that. I also love that you got .show. That's great.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's really cool.
I think
That's
that's a
memorable.
newer extension in the podcast age.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Very neat, very neat. Well, Greg and Stacy, thank you both so, so much. And we hope to have another conversation with you sometime soon.
Absolutely.
Can't wait.
All right. Thank y'all.